Welcome to KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. Today I'm going to make my healthier version of a family favorite comfort meal, one I used to make a long time ago for my kids because they really liked the taste and it was really easy and fast, and also because it was very budget friendly. I'm going to be making my Keto Hamburger Helper dinner, but this version is keto, gluten-free, and of course, very nutritious. Every once in a while, I like to pat myself on the back, especially when I adapt a recipe that I think is actually better than the original. For example, I find that this recipe has a creamier sauce, and if I do say so myself, a better and more gourmet flavor, while still being very child and family friendly. As all of my recipes, they're not just meant for keto, they're meant for everybody, regardless if you're on a keto, gluten-free, sugar-free, or whatever diet. I want to create and adapt healthier and more nutrient-dense recipes that are as tasty and sometimes even more tasty than original standard diet recipes. Let me explain some of the additional benefits of this recipe. First of all, this whole recipe is made in one pot and in less than 30 minutes. In fact, it takes less time to make than when we used to buy those boxes that would help us make Hamburger Helper into a meal. A special benefit to me, since I hate doing pots and pans, is because it's only one pot, there's less to clean, and that's always a good thing in my house. If I can, I would like to ask you to please watch the entire video right to the end, because by watching right to the end, it's one of the best ways that you can support my channel. And if you like my recipe, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and as always, I really appreciate it when you share a link and forward it to a friend or family. The macronutrient ratio for my Keto Hamburger Helper dinner is 1.8 to 1, with 7.7 grams of total carbs, 1.5 grams of soluble fiber, and 0.8 grams of insoluble fiber, resulting in 5.4 grams of net carbs per generous adult-sized serving. As you can see, I have assembled all the ingredients on this table. What makes this particular meal a keto budget recipe is it only uses simple, inexpensive ingredients. Also, after the recipe portion of the video, I will explain how best to store any leftovers, whether you want them short-term or if you want to freeze them for prep-ahead meals in the future. After that, I will also show you what side dishes I would serve with this Keto Hamburger Helper to make this into a more substantial meal and provide a little bit of variety. Now let's get started. In this version, I'm going to use cauliflower cut into somewhat larger bite-sized pieces in order to replace the high-carb elbow macaroni and other pasta usually found in boxed versions. To recap, the entire Hamburger Helper meal can be made in just one skillet, so you need to have a large cast iron skillet or Dutch oven. On your stovetop, set to medium heat. When your pan is hot, add the oil, and when the oil is sizzling, toss in the finely chopped onions, and then cook these onions until they're translucent and just starting to get some color like a light golden brown. At this point, add the minced garlic, stir the two ingredients together, and cook until fragrant. That should take about 30 seconds. Then make a clearing in the center by pushing the onions and garlic to the perimeter of the skillet, and then turn up the heat to medium-high. Then get your ground beef and distribute it, breaking it up as you put it into your skillet or Dutch oven. Then, using a spatula, break the ground beef clumps into small pieces like this. Then continue cooking the first side until the bottom meat has turned brown. When the underside is cooked, flip the meat and brown the other side. And finally, when all the meat has been browned properly, combine the onions and the garlic into the meat. As the meat is cooking, continue stirring periodically until the ground beef is cooked all the way through. This should take about 6 to 8 minutes. You want the meat fully cooked before you do the next step. My meat is cooked all the way through, so it's time to sprinkle the Frank's hot sauce over the meat. And also to add my creamy Dijon mustard, the smoked paprika, and finally, it's now time to add the cauliflower chunks. and to stir and toss in order to properly combine these ingredients with the meat mixture. I'm going to pour in my broth and stir. Here you can take a shortcut. You can use any good quality store-bought broth, either chicken or beef, it doesn't matter. Or if you have some on hand, as I'm doing, I'm going to use my homemade chicken bone broth. The link for the bone broth and the Keto Hamburger Helper written recipe, which can be translated to many other international languages. All the links I have mentioned and other links are all provided in the description below the thumbnail, so please do scroll down and check them out there. And now it's time to season the meat with salt and pepper. After adding the bone broth, it's a good idea to scrape the bottom and loosen the fond. That's the crusty stuff that's stuck to the bottom of the pan. That is absolutely amazing and adds a lot of flavor to the recipe. And then just keep cooking in order to heat the liquid to a light boil. And then all you have to do is cook for a few more minutes until the cauliflower is fork tender. I would recommend that you keep the cauliflower a bit on the firm side, or al dente, because when it's slightly crispy, it has a nicer mouthfeel and texture. Now the cooking portion is done, so remove the pan from the heat, and to this pan add your Greek yogurt and the grated sharp cheddar cheese. And then just stir until the cheese is melted and everything is well combined. That's all there is to making this. Now here I'm going to tell you about an optional step, which I often like to do. As you can see, there's a fair bit of liquid on the bottom of my pot, so I'm going to sprinkle in a bit of glucomannan and then stir the glucomannan into the water and just let it sit for a few minutes and toss again to combine everything. This will make for a nice thick sauce without being gummy. Then I leave everything alone and let it rest for about 5 minutes. If you're wondering, my total cooking time was about 20 minutes. The final step I like to do is to garnish with a sprinkle of green onion. The green onion adds a little bit of taste and it looks really nice. To plate and distribute, portion out 1/4 on each plate, and that's all there is to this basic meal. I have to admit that most of the time I just serve it like this because it's quite filling. When I'm making this for just David and me, I have leftovers, so what I do is one of two things. If I'm going to use it in the short term, I transfer the leftovers into an airtight glass container and put it into my refrigerator because it will keep there for 3 to 5 days, and reheat either on the stovetop or in the microwave. As I mentioned earlier, this recipe is suitable to be frozen. To freeze, you can either freeze the whole thing after it's done or freeze it before you add the cauliflower, and then add the cauliflower when you're reheating. And as always, I like to freeze leftovers in a freezer-safe, airtight glass container, which I label with what the recipe is and the date I froze it. This should keep very easily for at least 3 months, maybe longer. I find that the best way to thaw things is to transfer from the freezer, put it into my refrigerator, and let it thaw slowly overnight. This method preserves the texture and doesn't make things rubbery. And to heat, you can do it either on the stovetop or microwave. That's up to you. Now, to make this into a more complete meal, you can do that by adding one or more of the side dishes, such as adding a mixed salad. If you do want to add a salad with this, I would strongly recommend my avocado strawberry spinach salad because the flavor of the salad perfectly complements the Keto Hamburger Helper dinner. And because of the combination of all the ingredients, this makes a very nutrient-dense meal. Alternatively, we also like to have it with our roasted broccoli and Parmesan and lemon vegetable dish. Or if you don't want to serve it with vegetables, another thing you could do is use one of my breads or buns recipes, such as my easy keto buns and rolls, or my tortillas, or even my nacho chips, which you can dip in and have a nice crunchy version. There are many different things you can add with this meal. I would really appreciate hearing from you with inspirational ideas that perhaps we can try. I'm always open to new suggestions. I hope that the suggestions I have made will help with your meal planning. Thank you very much for watching my video and staying right to the end. This really does help my channel. And if you like my video recipe and tutorial and have not done so already, I would be honored if you would subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and scroll down to all, so you'll be notified when I post my next video. But until next time, I wish you good health and much happiness. Cheers!